Marvel Rivals is a very popular game at the moment with a lot of people playing it, and you probably are playing it too if you clicked on this video. And despite the fact that it's a very fun game to just pick up and play, the truth is that there is a ton of depth and complexity in the game, especially if you want to improve and as you play with better and better players. I've personally seen a lot of friends of mine send me videos along the lines of 10 beginner tips you need to know to play Marvel Rivals, or essential tips to climb faster with different characters or in general. And my problem with most of those videos is that the beginner ones aren't really focused on beginners, and even when they are, they don't cover the important things that you need to learn. And the others are centered on people who are already in the top 10% who understand most of the complicated stuff. And so I've put together this video. It's intended to cover most of the fundamentals that you need to learn in order to improve at the game and start seeing where that improvement should happen. It's not just a bunch of tips thrown at you, there's context to explain them and why they matter and what you can do to improve in every single one of them. And even if you aren't a complete beginner, if you aren't completely new to this type of game, I think you're going to find stuff here that you probably didn't know about or had never considered. And why would I know any of this? Well, because hi, I'm Mug. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new here, welcome back. I'm a former top 500 Overwatch player. I have consistently played the game at Masters to Grandmasters level, and currently, because I play a lot of games that I like to talk about on this channel, I play Marvel Rivals and I'm only Diamond 2, but I don't think that's really bad. But when I have time, I'll probably make the extra effort and just play more. That's one of the things you need to know, that a lot of ranking up is just playing a lot. I've made educational content for Overwatch in the past with this same premise, and that has been very successful, so I hope that this video helps you out just as much as my other videos have helped others. And this is just the basic beginner's guide. From here, there's going to be one more video covering everything from advanced to expert. So keep an eye out for that one. I don't ask you to subscribe because I'm a variety channel. I cover a ton of different video games of all sorts. So if you're looking for just Marvel Rivals content, don't subscribe, but keep an eye out for that one if you enjoyed this one. With all of that out of the way, let's get into it. So the most important thing you need to know at the very start is that you shouldn't be self-conscious about your abilities. The part that I left out before when talking about my experience in these games is that I have potato aim. I am not very mechanically gifted as a player, and even then, I've managed to be within the best non-pro players in the world in them. And that's the magic of a game like Marvel Rivals or Overwatch. You don't need to be incredibly gifted at one specific type of gameplay. Because there are so many different characters, you can find something that you're good at, that you enjoy doing, and there's probably even multiple different characters that fit with that playstyle. This is also one of the reasons I think a lot of people who don't normally like shooters end up playing these sorts of games. And if that was already true in Overwatch, it's even more true in a game like Marvel Rivals, where there's, for example, a lot more DPS options that are pure melee. And while I don't want you to feel bad and think that, oh man, I suck, you don't have to be repeating that to yourself every single match, it is important to know your strengths and weaknesses and maybe gravitate towards something that suits your strengths better, especially at the start. And that's because in that beginning, when you're still playing casual, maybe you're playing ranked a couple of times a day or something, you're still learning so much about the game. And a lot of the things you learn can be divided into two different parts. It's general knowledge and character knowledge. And character knowledge takes a very long time to learn. It comes with a lot of experience with understanding every character on every map and how they work with every other character and against them. And very often, to get a full understanding, you're going to want to play those characters eventually, to know what you're doing, to know what other people are doing, to have that perspective of why isn't this other character healing me? And if you ever pump enough time into a game like this, you're going to know the basic rhythm, the cooldowns of everybody on your team just by heart. You're going to listen to them, use an ability, and you'll know when it's going to be up again. But that is very far away in the horizon. For now, you want to obtain as much general knowledge as possible. And to do that, the best thing you can do is pick some characters that you really enjoy playing, maybe in a couple of different roles so that you can swap in case your team needs that, and just play that you enjoy a lot. and most importantly, enjoy it. Have a lot of fun playing those characters, so that as you get experience, as you get a feel for the game, as you understand some of the more important parts of it, you can kind of enter your own flow state where you're very comfortable with the character, and that allows you to pay attention to everything around you. Instead of at the start when you're kind of still figuring out your abilities or worried about combos and things like that. That occupies a lot of like your mental energy. So you're not paying as much attention to what your teammates are doing or what the enemy is doing and what you can do to react to that, because you're still not comfortable with doing the things you can do. So pick the characters that you like best, that suit your playstyle. It doesn't matter, especially in lower ranks and casual play. If somebody says, that character's bad, or you shouldn't play that character sucks. It doesn't matter, as long as you're not trolling, as long as you're not picking the 6th DPS pick in ranked. Play what you like. The game is very new, the meta is shifting constantly, so when people say that something is terrible and you shouldn't pick it, honestly, have no idea what they're talking about. And some of the most respected streamers and content creators have already been horribly wrong on some characters. And in my opinion, every single character in the game is viable. You can win with every single character, but also every character in this game has quite a lot to learn. They're pretty complex in themselves. It takes a while to understand everything about them and use them to the best ability possible. So as long as you're having fun, stick with it. Oh, and by the way, we do have a sponsor on this video, and it's going to start right now. But today, this video has a sponsor that I've been waiting for a very long time, because I use this every day. It's Surfshark VPN. And that's because VPNs have become an essential tool when it comes to your privacy and getting better services and better prices no matter where you are. I've been very lucky to be forced to travel a lot in my life and live in a lot of different places, and VPNs have been essential for me and my family to manage things like our subscriptions to services like Netflix, Max, or Disney. Surfshark can not only help you protect your data, but allows you to connect from over 100 different locations. And not just you, because your entire family or friends can use it. An unlimited amount of devices can connect to your account, which means that me and my entire family can use those family subscriptions that we pay for, even if we don't live in the same country. Not to mention the amount of times that simply changing your location can help you get deals on things like hotels and flights. I would know, again, had to travel a lot. And that's without mentioning the whole host of other things that Surfshark offers. And here's the most important thing. In a world where everybody is trying to take advantage of your private data and your location to squeeze you just a little bit more, a VPN is a way to turn the tables and take back a little bit of control. And when it comes to VPNs, my choice was always Surfshark. Check out the link in the description below to start taking advantage of all of these things for yourself, and if you're not convinced, you always have 24/7 support, and of course, 30-day money-back guarantee. And thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Okay, so let's talk about one of the big things in this game, especially because it doesn't have role queue to make sure that teams always have a certain amount of each role. Roles themselves are pretty important, but they're also pretty flexible. So when it comes to deciding what your playstyle is and what you enjoy doing more, understanding what characters do what is important as well, because as you try out new characters, you might be playing characters maybe not wrong, but definitely not optimally. You're not doing what the character was intended to do, you're not taking advantage of their strength. And trust me, when you play the characters as they are intended to be played, you're going to find not just a lot more success, but you're probably going to have a lot more fun. So we're going to go through some of the roles so that you know when you're picking your character what you should be aiming to achieve. And we're starting off with Vanguards. Vanguards or tanks is normally what I main. I was a diva one-trick pony many moons ago, so I specifically play off-tank. And that word there, off-tank, is meant to symbolize a tank whose main job isn't to protect the team necessarily. They're more disruptors. And that's the broad classification that you can look at tanks with. Main tanks normally have more attributes regarding things like shields or defensive moves, things that can nullify what the enemy is doing in order to protect the rest of the team and kind of organize a push together. Off tanks and the sub parts of off tanks, including dive tanks and utility tanks, you could say, which would be something like Penny Parker, don't fulfill that role as much as they instead disrupt or change the rules of the fight. Be that by soaking up attention, diving the backline, and doing damage to enemy healers, by doing more damage and causing displacement, characters like Thor, or by creating huge distractions and CC like Hulk. And this isn't completely rigid, and everything we're going to talk about here is very flexible depending on the map and the composition, but it's a good general idea to know that some tanks are just going to be better at protecting characters than others, and others are going to be better at dealing damage and causing chaos. If you're playing Hulk and you're sitting in front of your healers to protect them, I guess, you're not doing a very good job at playing Hulk, and you should probably be playing Strange or Magneto. But at the end of the day, the most important thing that a tank should do is soak up damage and attention. Doesn't matter what type of tank. Generally speaking, if people are shooting you instead of your teammates, you're doing a good job. Congratulations. And that is really where you want to focus if you're playing tank. It's doing your job, be that protection or diving, taking a lot of damage that then your healers can heal back up, and most importantly, not dying. Sure, you can get eliminations that can be very important, all that jazz, but the most important thing is that you don't die. Because if everybody's paying attention to the tank, that is what's keeping the rest of the team alive. And the moment that the tank isn't alive, guess who's gonna die after? Which leads me to the second role we're gonna cover, strategists or healers. Strategists are the lifeblood of a team. They are basically the most important part of the team at all time. The value and impact of the other roles can have a lot of variance. You can have very good tanks and very bad tanks. You can have DPS players that dominate a match or don't do anything. But supports are the most important role in keeping the team functioning and are the ones that ultimately do carry most games. It suffers from the same curse that a lot of tanks do as well, which is when you're doing a good job, nobody notices it. Most people, especially people who aren't playing these games a lot, will only notice healers and tanks when they're doing poorly, which is why a lot of people gravitate towards Duelists because it's all flashy, oh, you got a triple kill sort of stuff. But with bad healers, your team just won't work. One of my favorite parts of Marvel Rivals is the fact that they've crammed a ton of complexity into all of the healers we currently have. So while the skill floor is very, very low, doing a good job with most healers isn't difficult. It just, you press some buttons. Most of them have a lot of depth in how to use them and get the most out of them to the point that they can be carries, and I would argue that the most powerful character in the game at the moment is Luna Snow, followed by Mantis and probably Cloak and Dagger. Now, when you decide to play healer, your most important job is not dying. It's not the healing part, it's not dying. That's the number one priority. Because any healing is better than no healing, and when you're dead, you can't do your job. Self-preservation is the number one thing that you should focus on as a healer. Yes, you want to keep everybody alive, but you need to be alive to do that, so you start from there and then move forwards. Don't be discouraged if you are constantly dying in the backline, if you're getting attacked by Black Panthers and Spider-Men, and because of that, you're not healing or you're using your things on you to make it out alive. That is the correct decision to make. Protect yourself first. And if your team complains, let them complain. Just as with tank, the more attention you absorb, the better you're doing. As a healer, the less you die while still doing your job, obviously, is the indication of what you're doing well. If you want to measure how much you're improving as a healer, keep those deaths to a minimum while still saving your teammate. And in my opinion, the most important skill that you should have as a healer is awareness. In a chaotic game like Marvel Rivals, it should kind of look like you're suffering from ADHD. When I play healer and stream to my friends on Discord or something like that, very often they'll ask me if I'm crazy or at what sensitivity I play with my mouse, because I am constantly whipping the camera around and looking behind me, above me, everywhere. Because I want to make sure that everybody is alive, where they are, what they're doing, and just keep an overall track of everything that is happening with my team to know where I should be positioned and what I can do to best help them and make sure they don't get into a terrible situation. I would say healers are a great starting point for new players, even as you start to play more ranked and things like that, because you can start playing with very little. You don't need to be excellent at pretty much anything, you don't require a lot of mechanical skill, but there is a ton of different skill sets within the supports in the game at the moment. Mantis is excellent for awareness and also for hitting your own shots. Cloak and Dagger is basically a character built around awareness of the battlefield. Loki is about creating distraction and clutch plays. Jeff is about self-preservation and really keeping tanks healed up against a ton of damage. Adam Warlock is for people with very good knowledge of the game and also pretty good aim. There is a pretty good spread, and if you're nervous about not doing a good job, I would recommend you start playing some healers and see if something sticks for you. The final role is Duelist. And Duelists are very complicated because there's a lot of different types of Duelists. There are sharpshooters, which would be things like Hawkeye, Hela, Black Widow, and Namor. There's the characters that are more disruption and distraction based. Think of characters like Magic and Star-Lord. There's the more turret type of characters. Those are the ones that can pump out a ton of damage but require good positioning and oftentimes a little bit of support to get it out. That would be characters like Punisher, Iron Man, and Storm. And then there's the deep dive assassins, which are characters like Black Panther, Spider-Man, or Psylocke. And this is just a very general look. There's so much more. And of course, they all fall onto spectrums where they share different traits that are a little bit more in one direction or another. They're all very different, and I feel like most of them are pretty self-explanatory. Maybe the most difficult thing to comprehend are things like divers and disruption-based characters, which specifically Disruption is my favorite playstyle. I was a Tracer main for a very long time. Overall, they use a large list of different skill sets that you should focus on, from good aim to good awareness and good tracking, from excellent positioning. And if you like the idea of focusing on taking down your opponents, this is the one that you should go for. Just look at all the different ones, pick a character, play it, and if you feel good, if you like the way they play, you like the sound effects, you like the animations, keep going. You'll figure it out. Now let's move on to the basic formula of things. While we're not going to cover different general compositions here, things like the difference between a ball composition and a dive composition, for example, there is a lot of basics to cover in how a game like this plays. Generally speaking, tanks are up front soaking damage, healers are healing them, and they're also keeping the DPS alive, which are the ones responsible for looking for opportunities to kind of break everything open. If a tank falls, the team can kind of steamroll through. If the healers fall, then tanks crumble quickly after. So a lot of the time, it's just two teams in front of each other kind of trading blows. And this is where one of my most important tips for beginners comes in, which is the concept of trash damage, which some people call tank damage. I don't like the term tank damage because, first of all, it's confusing with the damage the tanks do, but secondly, damaging the tanks can be very good. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about with trash damage is the idea of pumping damage into characters that you know for certain is just going to be healed. It's this trade of giving ultimate charge to your DPS or to whoever, and giving ultimate charge to the enemy supports, and both teams just kind of shooting stuff and healing stuff. And considering the fact that support ultimates in this game are very strong, it kind of doesn't amount to anything, especially in the case when both teams just end up trading support ults. And this is not the same as coordinating and taking down a tank. If Rocket used his ultimate, gave everybody the damage boost, and you decided to just overwhelm their tank, maybe their Doctor Strange, break the shield and kill them because you're doing more damage than what their healers can heal, that's fine. It's when something like that isn't happening and you're just kind of trading blows without anything happening. The reason I mention this is because it doesn't matter what role you play, it is more valuable to do damage to anyone else. If you're a tank with long-range capabilities and you're kind of standing there against the enemy tanks, aim for the supports. Don't just do damage to the tanks. Think of it this way. If their tanks and their supports attack you and your supports heal it, that's fine. But if you attack their supports and you kill one of them, you just broke the whole thing wide open. And if you don't kill them, you're making them change their priorities. Now they can't worry so much about healing their tanks because they want to stay alive. And maybe the healers have to start healing each other, and then the tanks die. But it doesn't matter if you're playing DPS, tank, or support, aim for the backline. If you put damage onto DPS characters, they might have to retreat and find a way to get their healers' attention and get healed because the healers are only healing their own tanks and things like that. It's always going to be more valuable. You gotta eliminate the endorphin rush of like hitting tanks because they're these big easy targets and hearing like the ding 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 of the headshots and be like, yes, me shoot tank. And if you actually want to like win and break through that phase of the game, aim elsewhere. In your target priority, the number one thing is to not attack tanks that are just going to lead to trash damage. Try and make your damage count for something. Make somebody panic, make somebody afraid, make somebody have to turn and run. After that, it's the most valuable thing you can do to get a kill. Picks are very important. The higher up you go, the less that people die, so anybody dying can be the turning point of a fight. So if somebody is low, reprioritize. The other very important part about target priority is protecting your healers. If your healers are constantly getting dove and constantly under attack, they can't heal you because they have to heal themselves and protect each other. Turning around and attacking the people attacking your most valuable members is what's going to lead to everything working better. Taking out a diver and having your healers be able to push your team into the enemy team when now they only have 5 people is very often a win. Speaking of which, now that we have this general phase of play established of, 2 teams just kind of smacking their heads into each other, smacking the microphone apparently as well. Being efficient and winning a match isn't always about your statistics, which is something that I see a lot of the beginner players worry about. And when I say beginners, I think that's like up to gold, more or less. Your KDA, or kills, deaths, and assists, doesn't matter. Stop paying attention to it and stop looking at other people's KDA. A lot of the time, matches are decided in very clutch moments, in big plays that lead to a snowball and a change in the momentum of it. And if you're at a deficit constantly before that, that doesn't matter. If you have the worst technical statistics of the match, those stats don't look at a lot of the other things that you might do. Some good examples of this come from characters that dive, be that DPS or tanks. I main Thor, so very often I will jump into the backline and try and get on their healers. Sometimes I kill them, which is great. It's basically a free win, look at that. But other times I make the healers panic and run away and run through rooms, and maybe they group together, they heal each other, and they kill me. So I didn't get any positive statistics there, I just died. But the thing is that during that entire period of time where I was chasing their healers into a room and then I died, during that period of time, do you know what the enemy team didn't have? Because yeah, my team didn't have me, the off tank, but the enemy team had no healers. Everybody else gets to score 5 points on the board, but those points only really happened because of decisions like that, because of pressuring the enemy healers, because getting ultimates out of them. A lot of those things aren't really measured. The context of what you're doing often matters much more than the numbers. If you shut down a couple of very valuable ultimates because you reacted well, that can win matches that otherwise you would have lost, even if your KDA is negative. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't matter at all. Obviously, if somebody is, 0-10, they're probably doing something wrong or playing a character into a composition that they shouldn't. But I see a lot of people just obsess over this sort of stuff. Don't worry about that. Worry about the impact that you had on the match, not on your statistics. And if you're going to care about your statistics, the most important one is deaths. Die as little as possible. Speaking of which, it's very important that you learn how to survive on your own and minimize the damage you take. Making sure that you take less damage is often about positioning and map knowledge. Stop running through the center of things. Don't just run blindly through the center. Look for walls, look for cover, These are the two ABCs of this type of game. It's always be cornering and always be covering. Always make sure that your teammates are covered, that you're doing damage where you need to by looking around, seeing what is happening around you, and always be cornering. Make sure that you're sticking to corners, that you're being careful when you move, because you might be leaving yourself vulnerable. There's a lot to cover regarding this topic, and that'll be coming up in the next video, where we'll talk a lot more about line of sight and dynamics of that, including risk and reward. For now, however, let's cover the very basics of good positioning. It doesn't matter what role you're playing, you should always be using cover. When possible, peek, don't just walk out into the open where you're going to be a very easy target. Wherever you decide to stand to do damage, wherever you need to move in order to do that, try and make sure that you have an easy escape route and a way to cover yourself. And the ideal thing to do, again, this has to do with line of sight, is find a position where also your healers have vision of you without them needing to put themselves in danger. A great example of this are characters like Iron Man and Storm. More realistically, Iron Man, since I doubt many people see Storms like at all. But I see so many Iron Men that just stand in the middle of the arena, but very high up, hoping that people don't notice them. And it makes it so easy for certain characters to just walk out and eliminate them. And if anybody pays attention to them, they will die. They seem to think that just because they can fly, they're untouchable. In reality, a good Iron Man will be using cover. They'll be using walls, they'll be using pillars, they'll just always make sure that they're positioning close to it, and they will only go in to start using the laser if they have their team with them. And you might think that this isn't true, that those Iron Men that float in the middle of the map don't actually get punished, but trust me, the more that you play, the higher you climb, the faster they're going to get destroyed. Or to simplify the whole thing, just make sure you're using cover. But the other very important thing to consider with positioning is where you are relative to the rest of your team. This is such a huge mistake that I constantly see people in lower skill brackets make. You shouldn't be in front of your tank. If you have a Doctor Strange with a shield up and you're playing a Hela or a Punisher, stand behind your Doctor Strange. If you stand in front, you're defeating the purpose of the tank. The tank wants to absorb attention and damage because they can survive it. And if you stand in front of them, even the people who are attacking the tank instead of you, right? Because, like we said, the trash damage is heading towards the tank, but because you're in front of them, you're just gonna get hit, even if it's on accident. And sometimes it can be very frustrating because you feel like your tank or like any other member of your team isn't doing a good job of engaging or moving the team forward, so you just rush past them as a support or a DPS. But you're not supposed to do that. You will 100% of the time get a better result if you wait for other people that are better designed for their roles to do their roles. This is why very often you will see in a lot of higher elos that people won't rush to touch on first point or something like that, and they'd rather just sit back and let the payload reach that checkpoint. Because if as a support or as a DPS you just rush in to try and stop it for the final push, you can very quickly turn that into a trickle effect where now you're a player down and the enemy team is going to steamroll the other players, and that turns into this ball that can be the entire next part of the map. Adhering to team composition by respecting where you should be positioned is very important, and you should always be aware that when you're breaking that formation of tanks, DPS, and healers, you are putting yourself at risk. And you have to assume that risk and know that even though there might be a reward, it is very possible to go sour. Also, another lesson I think is really important: stop blaming people. One of your DPS is doing absolutely nothing, and we get it. You say that you're not getting healed, and that even might be true, but telling people that they're bad, that they're not doing their job, and then chalking up a loss to that isn't going to help you improve at all. I see so many people that have a mentality of, this healer doesn't heal, GG, go next. And all you're doing at that point is wasting your time. I've even seen people go AFK. You can't control the behavior of other people. So don't look for them as an excuse to why you're losing. Look for how you can improve to win even when you have horrible teammates, or straight up trolls on your team. A good mindset to improve is one of the most important parts about the whole process. If you're constantly getting frustrated and blaming other people, instead of wondering what you can do better and taking every loss as an opportunity to see what you did wrong and improve on it, it's just so much more difficult if you're not willing to look at your flaws. So even if you're playing very well and it really isn't your fault that you lost a match, there's just nothing positive that's going to come from blaming others. And now the final tip for this video is actually going a little bit back on something I said at the start. Assuming that you've already put some hours into the game, you've been practicing some of those fundamentals, you've been worried about your positioning, you've been worried about what's happening around you, and you're getting comfortable with the character you like. Try out different characters in all three roles, even if you don't end up playing that role too much. Firstly, it's really fun, but it's also a part of general knowledge. I said at the start that character knowledge is this very long journey as you learn absolutely everything about every character so that you better know how to play with and against them. But the overall fundamentals of how the roles work and what they do is something that you should be familiar with. So at the minimum, I would say playing 2 tanks, 2 different DPS, and 2 supports is going to give you so much information about the game. Almost hilarious how often DPS players will cry and scream that they are not getting healed, that it's a support gap, and those players, when they're forced to play support in a different match, will incessantly complain that they can't heal their DPS because they're standing behind walls where it seems like they're actively avoiding the ability to get healed. It is a matter of perspective. If you play DPS and complain that you don't get healed, play healer, because there's a very good chance that through that, you will then go back to DPS and understand what you were doing that made it so difficult for healers to heal you. You were probably positioning in really bad areas where the healers would have to put themselves at risk just to heal you. So there's a lot of knowledge that you can obtain for every role by understanding how each of them work, what they want to do, and what are the most common things that make that difficult that you can probably help and fix. Please shoot the penny nests. I play a lot of melee characters. It's incredible how many people in Diamond and above are just like, why is the tank not pushing? It's like, bro, I'm Hulk. I'm sitting here waiting on cooldowns to kill Penny Nest because if I just walk forward, I will die. And if I jump to the other side of it, nobody's gonna heal me because you have to cross the Penny Nest to heal me. So you'll die. Nobody. And no, sorry, I gotta shoot Penny Nests. Shoot no more. Shoot everything that people make, okay? Thank you. So, summarizing pretty much everything in this video as quickly as I can, and you can use the timestamps to go back and listen to any of it or look at some of those recommendations. Choose characters that you enjoy. Don't listen to what people say on you shouldn't play them. Just put hours into the game having fun, but pay attention to the things around you so that you get general knowledge, so that you better understand the roles and what they're doing and what their objectives are, now that we've explained a bit more what each role is meant to do. Get familiar with the map and understand what areas of the map you're safe in and where you can be the most efficient while not dying, which is the only key statistic in which you should try and improve. And stop flaming people, stop complaining about stuff, focus on you. You want to get better, do everything that you can to make that happen. There is a lot more to talk about and discuss very in depth, but I just wanted to make a guide for baseline, because otherwise that other guide would be like 3 hours long. And that video will be out early next year. I've been Mug. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was productive, that you found it fun and educational. You can check out a bunch of my other content on other games, on news, reviews, retrospectives. I do a ton of stuff regarding video games on the channel because I love video games a lot. And of course, hitting the like button, hitting subscribe helps this video reach more people if you're interested. An extra special thanks to my patrons, which I'm pretty sure none of them care about Marvel Rivals, but technically they are funding this in a sense, and I thank you so much, and I hope that that they're okay with me doing this, hopefully for the benefit of Marvel Rivals and its community. Go out there, have some fun, and as always, I'll see you again very soon.